Hello, I'm Diva Brown from Simply Magazine. We do a number of education discs, which are far simpler and far easier to use than long, ponderous ones. Ours are lecture-length. The first one we talked about the other day was 500 SAT and GRE words to help you on your test prep. The second one we did was in punctuation, 60 minutes to better writing. Both of these, like our discs, are meant to simplify your life, not complicate it, and not give you a fire hose of information, but a garden hose. A little bit at a time. And the great thing about audiobooks is you can do one track at a time when you're in the car, on your way to school, on your way to work. And it enhances your ability by listening and re-listening. The key to Simply is don't make it hard on yourself. Make it simple. We have here The Elements of Style, which was originally written by William Strunk, a professor at Cornell at the beginning of the 20th century. Why did Professor Strunk write this? He did so because most of the students coming to his class from high school were not well educated in writing, grammar, vocabulary, and things that related to it. So he took a step back. He went and dealt with this failing by helping the students learn how to write better by particular suggestions he had. What we did is we went back to his original lecture, which was half of the lecture that people are more common with, the Strunk and White edition, which is basically on steroids, twice as long as it needs to be, and quite a difficult mountain to climb. Professor Strunk himself made it quite simple. And in doing so, we have 25 tracks of about 2 or 3 minutes each. And I just want to introduce you to a little of it. First, he starts with the elementary rules of usage, not complex things, simple things. Then he talks about the form of the possessive singular of nouns, with s's or without them, which we all have issues with apostrophes. Then he has 3 or more terms with a single conjunction. How do you put that together? Then he speaks about parenthetic expressions between commas. And parentheses can be challenging, and this is a big help. But remember, it's only 2 or 3 minutes. Then it talks about placing a comma before and or but, which is called the Oxford comma. 1, 2, comma, and 3. Do not join independent clauses by a comma. Again, as we say in punctuation, commas are tricky. And so one of the things that Strunk says is, if possible, write them out of your writing. Do not break sentences in two. If it's not a real sentence, don't do it. Divide words at line ends. That's interesting, because the point is that's no longer a problem because of modern communication, so that's one not to worry about. Elementary principles of composition. What are the basics to do it? And as with most things, those are the ones that count. Then he says something extremely important. It's not the whole document, it's not a sentence, it's the paragraph. The paragraph is the unit of composition. Think of writing paragraphs, which, by the way, is much easier than thinking of writing an entire document. Then begin a paragraph with a topic sentence. Always introduce the purpose at the beginning of the paragraph, not at the end of it. Something very important that we're all taught, but we often neglect, is use the active, not passive voice. Try to come up with something that's positive as opposed to stepping back into that. Then he follows that up with put statements in the positive, which is interesting. Don't deal with negatives, try to deal with the positives. And perhaps his most famous comment is omit needless words. Be very rigorous with yourself. Now, when you take SATs and so forth, they've got many places in which they guide you to what should you do. Often it's to omit needless words. And a point that he makes that's interesting is avoid a loose structure of sentences. In other words, tighten the composition. Better that it's shorter than it's longer. Then something that we all struggle with. Keep related words and ideas together. Don't start a sentence and then at the end staple on one little thing. In summaries, keep to one tense. This is interesting. Don't go from past to future and back and forth. Then he gives a few matters of form and, which I like very much, words and expressions commonly misused. And then 56 words commonly misspelled. For under $5, this is a very valuable audiobook. And you should know it's the #1 book on writing of all time. Thank you for listening, and you can go to audible.com, staples.com, or our site, simplymagazine.com, to buy this